So Spider-Man No Way Home just cracked the top 10 highest grossing films of all time, officially coming in at number 6. So today I'm going to be ranking the top 10 highest grossing films of all time. What's going on, guys? I'm Chris, and welcome back to another video. You might notice this fancy setup. I'm trying out something new. Make sure to hit the like button, comment down below your favorite movies from this list and your ranking, and make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on any future rankings just like this one. So coming in dead last for me has to be The Lion King 2019. This movie's abysmal. In my mind, it does not exist. I went and saw this with my lovely lady friend Cam, and after the movie, I actually got in a car accident. Someone rear-ended me on the way home, and so I think this kind of just sums up the whole entire experience with the movie. It is a shell of the original 1994 version, which is actually one of my favorite movies of all time. It's the best animated movie ever, in my opinion. So this is basically just a lifeless remake of that, and you can't really convey emotion through these realistic animated characters because it just doesn't work as much. The Lion King was meant to be an animated movie, not a hyper-realistic animated movie. I really felt nothing with this movie. The music didn't even hit as much. I think the soundtrack is far inferior, and it's just unfortunate this movie exists. Did it do $1 billion? Yes, it did, but it is nothing special compared to the other movies on this list. Next up for me is going to be Furious 7. Now, I am not an avid Fast and Furious fan. I actually watched all the movies for the first time in middle school leading up to this movie so I could actually see it in theaters. I like the song with Charlie Puth. I think it's really well done. Obviously, this movie has that emotional homage to Paul Walker, rest in peace, but this movie isn't really that special. It's not one of my favorite Fast and Furious movies. I think that it's very cheesy at times, like all the movies are, and it just continues to get more and more outlandish. There's literally a moment in this movie where they're driving a car between buildings, which just kind of sums up again how wild this franchise has gotten. I gave up after Fate of the Furious. I haven't seen Hobbs and Shaw or Fast 9. I just don't really care for this movie too much, unfortunately. I know there's a lot of hardcore Fast fans out there, though, so more power to you. Next on my list is going to be Jurassic World. Now, this movie broke the opening weekend box office record when it initially came out. I remember, seeing it in theaters that weekend and being shook that it broke the Avengers record for opening weekend. And then Force Awakens would go on to break its record later that same year for opening weekend. But Jurassic World's a film that has its fun elements. I think Chris Pratt has the ability to carry movies. But unfortunately, I don't really like this one too much. I have only seen it 1 or 2 times in my life. I never have the urge to revisit it, and I just kind of fell off with it over time. It's one of those movies that didn't age well. It's far inferior to the original Jurassic Park, and while it does have its fun moments, it just doesn't really hold up on rewatch or hold up over time. Next on my list is going to be Avatar, the movie that is currently the highest grossing film of all time worldwide. Now, Avengers Endgame held this title briefly, but of course Avatar reclaimed the throne when it re-released briefly, which I think is a very petty move by James Cameron, so it kind of made me a little salty as a hardcore MCU fan, but it is what it is. I don't really care for Avatar too much. I think it's an alright movie. I haven't seen it in over 10 years. I want to be honest with you guys. I haven't seen it since like 2010, so I will give it a rewatch and my thoughts could completely change on it. I will admit the visuals were stunning, and the ride at Disney World I think is cool. I'm not crazy about it. I think it's wildly overhyped, but as a hardcore Avatar fan, I can definitely see some people kind of buying into that. I am not a hardcore Avatar fan, but those who are, like my good buddy Trevor from Film Geeks, can definitely buy into the hype for this ride. I don't know if this new sequel is going to do as much money. I think it's still going to crack $1 billion because, again, the title Avatar holds so much weight when it comes to that box office king crown. But overall, the movie kind of just had a lot of rehashes of other plots where people are going out and trying to save the smaller group that's getting overrun by like a military presence. Don't love the movie by any means, but I'm going to give it a rewatch soon. Next on my list is another James Cameron epic, and that is going to be Titanic. This movie I didn't watch for the first time till like the beginning of 2020. Obviously, this is an all-time classic. It goes without saying. I do like it quite a bit. I think Leo's a young stud in it, and of course his chemistry with Kate Winslet is iconic. The movie's 3 hours and 15 minutes long. I think it does a damn good job of portraying just the stress and the wild nature of this night on the Titanic. I think that I have to give credit to the behind the scenes crew for making it seem so realistic too. Like the way this movie was shot is stunning, but it's not one of my favorites like I mentioned, and I like it. I think it definitely lit it up at the box office for a reason. It's got the star power. It's this epic 3 hour 15 minute long romance story, so it works. And it's a classic, don't get me wrong. It's just not one of my favorites. It did win Best Picture though, so that's cool. And comparing Titanic to Avatar, give me Titanic all day. Next on my list is going to be the original Avengers movie from 2012. Now, every time I talk about this movie, I remember, how it's historic. I say I saw it multiple times in theaters. It's one of the first movies I saw multiple times in theaters, and it's just a fantastic film. It really is. If you rewatch it, it goes by so fast. Loki is this villainous presence, just works. And again, it's a classic in my eyes. It's classic MCU. Next, we've got Star Wars Episode 7, The Force Awakens. To this day, I'd be willing to say this might be my favorite theatrical experience of all time because I remember people dressed up as Jedi in theaters. This was before reserved seating, or actually they did have reserved seating, but I got went to a theater where they didn't have reserved seating. So I got there like 2 or 3 hours before showtime on a Thursday night. I had a chemistry final that day, and I was like, screw it, we're going to watch The Force Awakens. And when the opening crawl music played, everyone was transported back to their childhood. The nostalgia was just so real in that theater. And prior to the sequels, the other two, 8 and 9, I just think this movie was so much fun. And looking back on it just as its own thing, separated from the rest of Star Wars, The Force Awakens is still a damn good movie that does a great job of blending in the old characters with the new, setting up a fun adventure that I don't think was delivered upon with the sequels. But looking at this movie as its own entity, as its own thing, I adore The Force Awakens. Coming in at number 3 for me is going to be Avengers Endgame. Now, this is, of course, the box office king for some time until the Avatar re-release technically dethroned it. But Avengers Endgame is the culmination of everything we love in the MCU. I've said that so many times on the channel. You all know how I feel about the movie. But I'll say this. It was so upsetting that when I saw this movie for the first time, my theater's crowd was lame. And when I got to see a few other MCU movies that I'm going to talk about in a second, or at least one in particular, the crowd kind of made up for it. So that is cool. But Endgame, it's what you expect. I mean, I didn't think this movie was ever going to be topped at the box office until the re-release. And I will say, I think a certain movie I'll talk about in a second would have topped this in normal circumstances. But my runner-up is going to be Avengers Infinity War. Now, this is, for a while, my favorite MCU movie. It's still a lot of people's number one MCU movie, and it's the most shocking MCU movie because at the time, I didn't think Marvel had the guts to kill off their major characters, and damn it, they killed pretty much most of the newbies, leaving just the originals behind to fend for themselves in this new world to go and find and kill Thanos and try and get everyone else back. It's the most shocking plot twist in the MCU, I think, with Thanos snapping away half of humanity, including our heroes. It is constant entertainment from start to finish. There's drama, the emotions are flowing, but the action is riveting. It is a great, great movie, one that stands the test of time, I think. I think Infinity War and Endgame are just this piece of history that will probably not be recaptured. But taking the top spot for me in the top 10 highest grossing films of all time is Spider-Man: No Way Home. Now, a year from now, maybe my thoughts will differ, but at this very moment, I am riding the wave of this movie. I absolutely adore it. It's the perfect Spider-Man story. It delivered us this nostalgia with seeing all 3 Spider-Man on screen, but it went deeper than that because that had an actual impact on Tom Holland's Spider-Man's arc, instead of it just being fan service. So I really like the way they handled that. The theatrical experience is legendary, one of the best I've ever had. It made up for the Endgame experience, and I'll never forget the first time I saw this movie, how wild the crowd went when we got to see Andrew Garfield, Tobey Maguire, and then actually Matt Murdock at the beginning, so that was pretty cool too. I'm going to see No Way Home a few more times this year, probably like 5 more times once it comes out on Blu-ray, and really finalize my MCU ranking by the end of the year. But right now, it's my favorite MCU movie, and it's my favorite movie in the top 10 highest grossing films of all time. But that's going to do it for my ranking of the top 10 highest grossing films of all time. Definitely let me know yours in the comments down below. Make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on any future Marvel-related videos and all that good stuff. But thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you in future videos this week. And until next time, I'll see you guys later.